10 minutes. That's the entire window. 10 minutes between the last person who saw her and the moment she ceased to exist. A neighbor pulled over on the side of a dark New Hampshire road, spoke to a young woman standing next to a crashed car. She was shaking, she was cold, but she was alive. She was standing, and she told him she was fine. Said she had already made the call. He drove away. 10 minutes later, police arrived. She was gone. Not gone as in wandered a few feet away. Not gone as in sitting in a ditch nearby. Gone as in the kind of gone that 22 years, multiple federal investigations, hundreds of volunteers, cadaver dogs, ground searches, aerial sweeps, documentary crews, and an entire internet of amateur detectives have been unable to undo. No body, no confirmed sighting, no arrest, no answer. Her name was Maura Murray. She was 21 years old. She was a nursing student. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's girlfriend. And on a winter night in the White Mountains, she walked into the dark and never came back. Before we talk about what happened on that road, you need to know who Maura Murray actually was. Not the name on the missing persons flyer, not the face on the documentary thumbnail. The real person, because this case only makes sense when you understand her. Maura grew up in Hanson, Massachusetts, a quiet town on the South Shore, south of Boston. Born in May of 1982, the fourth child of Fred and Lori Murray. Two older sisters, an older brother, and later a younger half-brother. Her parents divorced when she was 6, but by all accounts the family stayed close. Whatever the split took from them, it didn't take that. What Maura had from a young age was drive, relentless, almost punishing drive. On the track at Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, she didn't just compete, she dominated. She broke long-standing cross-country records, earned Boston Globe all-scholastic recognition, and as a sophomore, 16 years old, she qualified for the National Outdoor Championships, finishing 33rd in the entire country. National Honor Society, graduated near the top of her class. On paper, she was the kind of person who makes everything look effortless. But there is always a cost to that kind of effort, and it doesn't always show up on paper. After high school, Maura accepted a congressional nomination to attend West Point, one of the most selective institutions in America. She studied chemical engineering, competed on the track team, was, by every external measure, thriving. But sometime during her second year, she made a decision. West Point wasn't right for her. She transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst to study nursing, a different path, a quieter version of who she was supposed to become. At UMass, her nursing dean described her as responsible and driven. She was. But behind that composure, according to her sister Julie, Maura was struggling with an eating disorder. And that detail matters not as gossip, but as context. Eating disorders exist in people trying to control something in a life that feels out of control. People who hold themselves to standards that were never survivable to begin with. Maura was that person. She was also in a long-distance relationship with a man named Bill Rausch, someone she had met at West Point. After graduation, he was commissioned as an Army lieutenant and stationed in Oklahoma, hundreds of miles away, the kind of distance that either holds a relationship together or quietly hollows it out. What wasn't public knowledge, and wouldn't be for years, was that Maura had also been seeing someone else, a fellow student named Hussein Baghdadi. He later told investigative journalist James Renner that they had been involved while she was still with Rausch. He described Rausch as controlling, someone who kept close tabs on Maura, where she was, who she was with, when she'd be home, someone she may have felt unable to leave. And then Baghdadi recalled something Maura had said to him, casually, the way people say things they half mean and half don't. "I wish I could just disappear." 3 months before she vanished, Maura was arrested for credit card fraud. Small amounts, food orders charged to a stolen card. The judge gave her a continuance, 3 months of good behavior, and the charge would be dismissed. She would not complete those 3 months. The picture that emerges is not of a criminal, it is of someone quietly unraveling, holding everything together on the outside while the inside came apart at the seams. Driven, disciplined, struggling, entirely human, and about to make a series of decisions that nobody around her saw coming.
What happened to Maura Murray didn't begin on February 9th. It began 4 days earlier, in a campus security booth at 10:30 at night. Maura was working her desk shift when her phone rang, her older sister Kathleen. Whatever was said in that call, the effect was immediate and total. Her supervisor found her at her desk, completely unresponsive, staring at nothing, tears running down her face but making no sound. He walked her back to her dorm room, asked what was wrong. She said 2 words, "My sister." It would be 13 years before the contents of that call became public. When Kathleen finally spoke about it in 2017, the picture she painted was devastating in its simplicity. She had just been discharged from a rehabilitation facility that evening, and on the way home, her fiancé stopped at a liquor store. That's what broke Maura Murray that night. Someone she loved was fighting to stay sober, and the person meant to be helping wasn't. 2 days later, Maura's father, Fred, visited campus. They spent the afternoon looking at cars, had dinner with a friend. Normal, warm. That evening, Maura borrowed her father's Toyota Corolla, returned to campus, attended a dorm party. She left around 2:30 in the morning. At 3:30 a.m., on her way back to her father's motel, she struck a guardrail on Route 9 in Hadley, nearly $10,000 worth of damage to his car. The responding officer filed a report. No field sobriety test was administered. Fred described his daughter that night as distraught. Her sister Julie would later say that whatever disappointment her father felt, it was nothing compared to what Maura inflicted on herself. Her inner critic was the harshest voice in any room she entered. She had failed, in front of her father, visibly, expensively. For someone built the way Maura was, that lands differently than it would for most people. Later that morning, Fred learned his insurance would cover the damage. He dropped Maura back at campus and drove home. That night, he called to remind her to pick up accident report forms. They agreed to speak again Monday evening to sort out the paperwork. It was the last ordinary conversation they would ever have. Just after midnight, Maura sat down at her computer and searched MapQuest for 2 destinations, the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. She didn't book anything, didn't confirm anything, just looked. At 3:32 in the morning, she submitted a homework assignment online for one of her nursing classes. Her sister Julie has returned to that detail many times since. If you are planning to disappear permanently, you do not submit coursework at 3:30 in the morning, unless you haven't fully decided yet, unless part of you is still holding on. By Monday afternoon, something had shifted. At 1 p.m., she emailed Bill. Short, deliberately casual, said she hadn't felt like talking to anyone, promised to call him later. She never did. At 1:24 p.m., she emailed her nursing supervisor, said there had been a death in the family, that she'd be out for a week. No one in the Murray family had died. She called a condominium rental in Bartlett, New Hampshire, a town her family had vacationed in. 3 minutes, no reservation. She called a hotel line for Stowe, Vermont. 5 minutes. Nothing booked. She packed her car, toiletries, clothing, school books, birth control pills. Her dorm room, when searched later, had boxes stacked against walls, art taken down. On top of one box, a printed email to Bill. Those who have seen it describe evidence of serious trouble in the relationship. At 3:15 p.m., she withdrew $280 from an ATM, nearly her entire bank balance, alone, confirmed on camera. She then stopped at a liquor store, returned some empty bottles for cash, bought vodka, Kahlua, Bailey's, and a 12-pack of Smirnoff Ice, just under $40, alone, confirmed on camera. Between 4 and 5 p.m., Maura Murray drove off campus for the last time, north on Interstate 91. At 4:37 p.m., she checked her voicemail. That was the last recorded use of her phone. She told no one where she was going, no confirmed destination, no one waiting for her. She just drove north, into the snow, into the dark. Route 112 in northern New Hampshire does not forgive mistakes. It bends sharply. The February snowbanks rise high enough to swallow a car. No streetlights, almost no buildings, just trees pressing in from both sides, and beyond them, the white mountains, silent and enormous in the dark. Maura's Saturn missed the bend, hit the snowbank. The driver's side made contact with a tree. Both airbags deployed. The radiator was pushed into the fan. The car was not going anywhere. At 7:27 p.m., a local resident named Faith Westman heard the crash from inside her home. She called 911. When asked about the driver, she reported seeing what looked like a man inside, possibly smoking. She later clarified, a reddish glow, most likely a phone screen. Officer Cecil Smith was dispatched immediately, 15 to 18 minutes away. Here is where the timeline becomes strange. Between 7:33 and 7:37 p.m., before Officer Smith has officially arrived, a separate witness driving past reports something. A police SUV parked nose to nose with Maura's Saturn. The official log places Smith's arrival at 7:48 p.m. That is a gap of up to 13 minutes. No officer has ever claimed to have been there earlier. The witness never retracted his statement. No explanation has ever been offered. At 7:42 p.m., a local school bus driver named Butch Atwood called 911. He had pulled over to check on the car, saw a young woman standing beside it, cold and shaking, but no visible injuries. He asked if she needed help. She said no, told him she had already called AAA. AAA has no record of any call from Maura Murray that night. Atwood drove home and called police himself. He noted that multiple other vehicles had passed the scene while he was there. At 7:46 p.m., 19 minutes after the first 911 call, Officer Cecil Smith arrived. Maura Murray was not there. The car was locked. Inside, a AAA card, blank accident forms, gloves, CDs, makeup, diamond jewelry, directions to Burlington, a stuffed animal from her boyfriend, and a book called Not Without Peril, a survival guide to the White Mountains. Missing, her bank cards, her phone, and some of the alcohol from earlier that day. And Maura. One more detail found later that night. A rag from her roadside emergency kit had been stuffed in the car's exhaust pipe. Not fallen in, not blown in, stuffed deliberately. Between 8 and 8:30 p.m., a contractor driving home along Route 112 passed a young woman on foot, moving quickly, heading east, 4 to 5 miles from the crash site. Jeans, dark coat, light-colored hoodie. He thought nothing of it at the time.
3 months later, checking his work records, he realized he had been on that road that same night. He called police.
Maura was not officially declared missing until noon on February 10th, nearly 17 hours after she was last seen. Her father, Fred, was working out of state when police called. They left a voicemail. He found out from his daughter instead. One of Maura's sisters reached him directly. He drove through the night. At 8 a.m. on February 11th, the search began. Fish and game officers, family, volunteers. A tracking dog picked up Maura's scent from a glove found in the car and followed it approximately 100 yards east of the crash site. Then it stopped, lost the trail entirely. To investigators, that suggested one thing: she had left the area in another vehicle, willingly or otherwise. That afternoon, Maura's boyfriend Bill Rausch arrived from Oklahoma with his parents. He was questioned privately, then with family present. He spoke to police and later the press with visible emotion. He was never considered a suspect. After landing, he turned his phone back on and found a voicemail waiting. He described it as the sound of someone sobbing. The call was traced to a card issued by the American Red Cross. Authorities determined it had not come from Maura. On February 12th, Fred Murray and Bill Rausch held a press conference, the first day the case went public. Police described Maura as endangered and possibly suicidal, stated she may have been intoxicated at the crash site. Butch Atwood, the only person who actually spoke to her that night, said she had not appeared drunk. The FBI joined the investigation 10 days in. Helicopters with thermal cameras swept the forest. Cadaver dogs covered terrain ground teams couldn't reach. Hundreds of volunteers worked the surrounding area. Nothing. In 2006, something happened that the public didn't fully learn about until later. Volunteers conducted another search within a few miles of the crash site. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Inside the closet of an A-frame house, roughly 1 mile from Maura's car, the dogs alerted. Strongly. The house had a history. It was connected to a local man with a criminal record, the same man whose brother had approached Fred Murray in late 2004 with a rusty stained knife, claiming his brother had killed Maura with it. Days after handing over that knife, the brother allegedly scrapped his car. Fred brought the knife and the story to authorities. The man's own family later said he had fabricated it entirely to collect reward money. The tip was never substantiated. But the cadaver dog alert inside that closet, that was never explained away. Carpet samples were collected for forensic testing. The results were never publicly released. In 2009, the case was transferred to New Hampshire's Cold Case Unit. For the first time, officials stated publicly it was being handled as a potential homicide. In April 2019, investigators excavated the A-frame property for the first time. Previous owners had refused permission for 15 years. The new owners cooperated fully. Now, the suspects. There has never been a formally named suspect in this case. No arrest, no charge. But certain names have surfaced over 22 years that have never been fully closed. The Man on YouTube. In February 2011, on the 7th anniversary of Maura's disappearance, a YouTube account appeared, username 112dirtbag. The video was titled Happy Anniversary. The content was simple: an older man staring directly into the camera, laughing, winking. Then the words Happy Anniversary appeared on screen.
Route 112, dirtbags, Fred Murray's own public word for whoever took his daughter. Internet investigators traced the account to a Boston man named Jeffrey Alden Olson. No confirmed connection to the case, never charged, appeared to seek attention. But the deliberateness of it, the date, the username, the wink, has never fully left the case. Bill Rausch. This is the most difficult name to raise. Raising it is not the same as accusing. His alibi was examined. He was in Oklahoma. The Murray family has never implicated him. But in 2019, 15 years after Maura disappeared, Bill Rausch was indicted on a felony charge of third-degree sexual assault. The alleged victim was a subordinate. Multiple women came forward in the years that followed, describing erratic and violent behavior. And one allegation that investigators and true crime researchers have not been able to set aside, that he asked partners to role-play as Maura Murray. None of this proves involvement in her disappearance. His alibi was examined. The Murray family has not implicated him. But it reshapes the picture of who Bill Rausch was, and it leaves a question nobody has cleanly answered. How much did Maura know, and how much of what she was running from was him?
Here is the part of this story that Maura's sister Julie has been saying for years. The part that doesn't make headlines as often as the theories do. The investigation had problems. Real ones. A handwritten phone number and address was found inside Maura's car the night she disappeared, never followed up on. Years later, Julie tracked down the owner herself. When she reached them, they said no one from law enforcement had ever called. Ever. Several people Maura had contacted in the days before she left were reportedly never properly interviewed. The initial ground search on the night of her disappearance focused west of the crash site. The only reported sighting of Maura after the crash placed her heading east. Nobody searched east that night. And then there is the question that keeps coming back. The witness who saw a police SUV parked nose to nose with Maura's car before Officer Smith officially arrived. A gap of up to 13 minutes in the official timeline that has never been explained. An officer who was never identified. A presence at the scene that has never been accounted for. Is that a cover-up? Probably not in the dramatic sense. Small departments make mistakes. Timelines get muddled. Memories are imperfect. But whether it was negligence or something else entirely, the holes are real. And they have never been filled. Maura Murray deserved better than that. Maura Murray would be 43 years old today. In February 2024, 20 years after she vanished, an age-progressed image was released. A woman in her early 40s, a face that could walk past you in a grocery store, sit across from you on a train, pass you on the street without you ever knowing. Her case remains open. Her sister Julie continues to speak publicly. Her father Fred never stopped searching. And the internet, forums, podcasts, documentaries, thousands of people who never met her, never stopped either. Maybe because she was so recognizable, a young woman under pressure, holding too much together, running out of places to put it, getting in a car and pointing it somewhere, anywhere, just away. Most people who feel that way don't disappear. They drive for a while. Then they turn around. They call someone. They find a way through. Maura didn't get that chance. Or she made a choice nobody can confirm. Or something happened in those 10 minutes that we have never been able to name. 22 years of questions, and the one that sits at the center of them all is still the same. What happened in those 10 minutes? We don't know. We may never know. But somewhere between 7:42 and 7:46 on a February night in 2004, Maura Murray made a decision, or had one made for her. And the world has been searching ever since.
Thank you for watching. If you care about stories like this, cases that still deserve answers, hit the thumbs up button. Consider subscribing and staying with the channel. New investigations are coming soon. And if you have thoughts about this case, share them in the comments. Every perspective helps keep these stories alive. Until the next story, stay curious and stay aware.